Now today, what I want to start with is something we all have in common. And it doesn't matter if you're a Christian or not a Christian. The thing we all have in common as humans is we all want to be happy. Is that true? Everybody wants to be happy. And so I want to ask you a question related to that. If you could change one thing in your life that you believe would make you happier in life, one thing that you think would make a big difference in your happiness, what is the thing that you would choose? So in other words, if you got, a wish or magic power and you could hit an easy button and change one thing and you think, man, if I could change that one thing, I'd be so much happier in so many different areas of life. What is your answer to that question? What is the thing that you would change? What's the thing that you would do? Your answer to that question, by the way, whatever it is, it has a name. In systems thinking, what they would call it is they would say you have just identified your leverage point. Okay, now let me explain what a leverage point is. A leverage point is a place in a system where one change can lead to significant and positive impact on the entire system. Quick example. So let's say that you decide to add fruits and vegetables into your diet, okay? Well, one of the things they've discovered is when you add fruits and vegetables into your diet, it lowers your blood pressure, it improves your blood sugar, it lowers your risk of heart disease, it lowers your risk of stroke, it lowers your risk of having vision problems, and it makes your mom really proud. That's all scientifically proven, okay? So if you do all that, I change one thing, what has all of this impact everywhere else. It's kind of like a domino effect. Well, that's actually good news for all of us. And the reason it's good news is because that means you don't have to change everything to see everything, or at least to see a lot of things, change. You don't have to change everything in your life to see everything change. But if you find the right thing to change, it has an impact everywhere, which brings up the question, well, are we chasing the right thing? I mean, you thought of something you wanted to change. If I could change that one thing, I'd be so much happier. Well, are we changing the right thing? Are we chasing the right thing to change? Today we're beginning this brand new series. We're going to spend the next 4 weeks talking about love, money, and the American way. And the reason we want to talk about this is because I'm guessing whatever your answer is to that question, hey, if you could change one thing to make you happier, what would you do? I'm betting I could guess your answer. And not because I'm a mind reader, but because all of us as Americans, we tend to think the same way. We tend to come up with the same general ideas of what we think is going to make us happier. So for instance, I bet for a lot of you, your answer would fall into the category of love. You'd go, it's relationships, right? It doesn't have to be romantic necessarily, but it'd be relationships. You're going, well, my marriage would get better, or that friendship would get better, or the situation with my roommate, or the relationship with my kids, or my dating relationship, or my lack of a dating relationship. If I had a relationship, it's something related to that. Even if you thought career, for some of you, you were like, man, if I could just change jobs or get that job, or this would change. But the motivation behind that was, it's my relationship with my boss or my relationship with my coworkers. I just need a better environment to work in. So it all comes back to love. It all comes back to relationships. For others of you, if your answer doesn't fall in this category, it probably falls into the category of money. Money. You want to make more, or you want to spend less, or you want to get out of debt, or you want to save more, or you want to be in a better financial position. And again, even for those of you who are like, if I could change jobs or this was underlying for some of you there, right? It's like, I want to get there because there I'll make more money. And then once I have that, I'll be happier. And I don't know if you've ever run into people like this. I bet you have at some point. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody who had more money than you? And they looked at you and they said, hey, you shouldn't stress so much about that. Money doesn't make you happy. Have you ever had somebody say that or heard somebody say that? It drives me nuts when they do. Next time somebody says that to you, here's your answer. You look back and say, okay, give me yours. That's all you got to say. And they will not, in case you're wondering. I've tried it. They will not. Because even though they tell you that, and there's truth to it, there's some truth to it, there's also some truth to the fact that money does play into our happiness. It is a factor. We can talk about that another day. My question to you would be this. Whatever your answer was to that question, of what would you change that would make you so much happier? How confident are you that it would work? Like if you could hit the button, or if you could make the wish, and it did come true, how confident are you that you'd actually end up happier in the long run? Now, the reason I ask that question, and if you're in your 20s or younger, teens or 20s, you're just going to have to take notes on this and wait a little while and then see if it's true for you. But for the rest of us, the reason I ask that question is because isn't it true that there was a point in your past where you wished for the very place you are today? Isn't it true there was a point in your past where you thought, oh my gosh, if I could just ever get there relationally, if I could just ever get there with a family, with friends, if I could just ever get there in terms of making this much money or having this much money or having these things. Isn't it true there was a point in your past where you were wishing and hoping for where you are right now? And you were certain at that point, if I can just get there, oh my gosh, I'd never want anything else. If I could just get there, I will be so happy. And now here you are. And what are you doing? Well, most of us are still wishing and hoping for a little bit more. Because while where we are provided some happiness, it didn't provide lasting happiness. So why is that? Well, I want to suggest that maybe there's something all of us humans want a little more than happiness. Maybe the thing that we want more is meaning. Now, here's why I say that. All of us want to be able to wake up every day and know there's meaning to our lives. That we're not just going through the motions and none of it really matters, and we're going to work or we're going to school and we're doing the deal and we're got our whole schedules. And none of us want to get to the end of the day and go, I don't know that made a difference for anybody. We all want meaning. We all want to know life's not random. We all want to know when we go through pain and suffering and trials and troubles and all the stuff, we all want to know there's meaning in the middle of that. As a matter of fact, you can get through just about anything if you feel like there's meaning and purpose in the middle of it. So as much as we all want happiness, the thing that we might want a little bit more is meaning. Which is why when Jesus was here, he introduced a different leverage point. Now, he didn't dismiss love and money. He talked about both of those things a lot. But Jesus said there is a leverage point that is actually more foundational and central to your life and mine than love and money. Turn those dials, make those better, that's okay. But he identified something that if we address it, addresses love and money and everything else. It's the one thing, it's a leverage point, if you will, that will make everything better. You change this, you change everything. What he introduced was this idea of trust. Now, why would Jesus talk about trust so much? Well, because whoever or whatever you trust has extraordinary influence in your life. Now, it's so common for us to do this that none of us pay attention to it and identify this consciously. But whoever or whatever you trust, it's influencing all your decisions in life, and it's influencing the direction of your life. The object of your trust always determines the outcome of your journey. In other words, the object of your trust, who or what you decide to trust the most, will always determine the outcome of your life, where you end up in life. Now, what does the American way encourage us to do? Who does the American way encourage us to trust? What's common for us as Americans? We should trust ourselves, of course, because I got to look out for number one first. I got to make sure I take care of me, and it's not that I don't care about all of you. I care about you, and I want to help other people. I just got to make sure I take care of me and meet all my needs first. I got to trust me. When I'm making a decision, I got to trust me. When I'm figuring out what to do, I got to trust me. The American way is for all of us to look in the mirror and say, okay, I got to trust myself. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is if you make yourself the one you trust, you put yourself at the center of your life. You become the foundation, which means you become an end and not a means to an end. Now hang with me here. In order to have a meaningful life, you have to be a means to an end. In order for you to experience meaning in life, you have to be a means to an end that is greater than you, bigger than you, more purposeful than you. When you remove being a means to an end and you make yourself the end, when you remove anything bigger or greater than you, and you make yourself the end, the greatest thing, the highest value, the number one priority, when you make yourself the end, you lose your ability to have meaning. Because everything just starts and ends with you. That's where it goes. So, over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about this relationship between trust and meaning and love and money. And I want to start today by illustrating what this looks like between love and trust. Love and trust, okay? So let me switch gears for just a second. Whenever you go into a relationship, it could be a dating relationship, marriage relationship, friendship, something at work, something at school, doesn't matter. Whenever you go into a relationship, you come carrying a bucket full of desires. Now, you don't think of it this way, but we all do this. This bucket full of desires, these are the dreams, hopes, wishes you have for the relationship. So we all, whether friendship, marriage, doesn't matter. We all have dreams and hopes and wishes for how we're going to communicate with one another, for how often we're going to communicate with one another. In some cases, for the way we're going to communicate with one another. Do not call me, text me, whatever that looks like for you. We have dreams and hopes and wishes and desires for how we're going to handle conflict, for how often we're going to hang out together, for how we're going to figure out, our rhythm and routine, for how we're going to show up for one another when things are difficult, for how we're going to treat one another. I could go on and on. You get the picture, right? How, in some cases, how we're going to manage money or think about money, how we're going to make decisions together. We carry all these desires into these relationships, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is, not long after we get into the relationship, once we know it's going, what most of us do is we take this bucket of desires and we dump everything into our bucket of expectations. And no longer is this a dream or a wish or a desire that I hope you will do this for me. Now I'm expecting you to do this for me. And here's the problem with expectations. When I take everything that I hope is true of our relationship and I make it an expectation, I set the bar so high that you have to work and work and work and work and work and work and work just to meet my minimum expectations. And you will be left worn out. Now, there are requirements for the relationship, and they're way up here. There's not any desires anymore. So what expectations do is expectations suffocate the ability to communicate or to express selfless love. Because if you've got a lot of desires for the relationship and you're not sure they're going to happen, and I show up and I work extra hard to think about you first and to meet you on your terms and to meet your needs, oh my gosh. That's an expression of love on my part towards you. I care about you enough. I want to try to make your dream or your wish or your desire come true. But when it's an expectation, I don't get to express love anymore. It's just required. It's a minimum to even be in relationship with you. And there's no gratitude anymore. This is why, by the way, when you pay your mortgage off, the bank never sends you a heartfelt thank you note with a gift card. Okay? Because it was not a desire for you to pay your mortgage off. It was an expectation. All right? Well, for a lot of us, there are people in relationship with us that it feels the same way. It feels like, oh my gosh, this person has so many expectations, and the best I can do is work to meet them. But there's no gratitude because you don't say thank you to people who do what's expected. You say thank you to people when you have a dream, a desire, a wish, and you're not sure it's going to happen, and they meet it. That's when gratitude shows up. So, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Matt, okay, that sounds good. The problem is, it sounds like you're telling me that all the things that I'm expecting, they're really good things. You're telling me I shouldn't be able to expect them anymore. Well, that doesn't feel right. Matt, I should be able to expect things like respect, companionship, acceptance, intimacy, love, understanding, appreciation, acceptance. Those are all good things. I should be able to expect all that in my relationships. And here's what I would say to you. All of these things are good things and more. We could list things forever. And they're actually all desires that God wired into you and He wired into me. God created us with a need for all of those things. So they're good God-given desires. But if you take all of these good God-given desires and you dump them into expectations bucket, and then you hand that to the people around you and say, okay, good luck, it will suffocate your relationships. And it will stifle your ability to have a relationship built on unconditional, selfless love. So, the short version of this sermon, you ready? Is just take everything in your expectations bucket, dump it back in your desires bucket, and you're good to go. But you know it's not that easy, and so do I. As a matter of fact, If we were talking one-on-one and I began to press you to let go of all these expectations you're trying to control and get people to do this stuff in your life, and I pressed you to let go of all that and just make them desires and hope it happens, you would resist that idea strongly. You know why you would resist it? Because you're afraid. I am too. We're afraid. Well, what if they don't? I think the only way that I can make sure I get all those things that are so good is I've got to expect them and hold people to them. And I'm afraid if I don't, they won't. And here's the deal. Whenever you feel that fear, this is so important to understand. Whenever you feel that fear, you have just put your finger on who or what you trust most. You have just put your finger on what you're treating as the leverage point in your life. And the reason so many of us resist taking these expectations and just making them desires is because we believe if it's going to happen, it's up to us. The one we trust the most is ourselves. And we do not want to let go of control and trust anyone or anything else. And as long as I make these things expectations in my relationships with you, I feel like I'm in control of whether I get them. The problem is, you're not actually in control. You're not actually in control because, well, if you were in control, you wouldn't have any problems to begin with, would you? You ever known anybody in total control who created problems for themselves? No. The whole reason you and I have problems is because we're not in control. But admitting that and surrendering that, well, that's an entirely different thing. Which is why Peter is one of Jesus' closest friends. And Peter knew what it was like to carry around a bucket full of expectations. If you don't believe me, just go pick any of the gospel accounts of Jesus' life. Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. Pick any one, read it, and don't pay attention to Jesus, pay attention to Peter. Wouldn't normally say that, but in this case, do that. Because here's what you're going to find. Peter spent 3 years with Jesus, and he had so many expectations for his friends. He had so many expectations for Jesus, and he did not mind telling them. I mean, Peter didn't get this. He did not want to let go of control. It took Jesus' death and resurrection and some lessons after that for Peter to realize, oh, there's a different way to approach this. I don't have to trust myself anymore. So he's writing a letter, and here's the advice he gave us all about this. He said, all of you clothe yourselves, which means he's going, this is not going to happen accidentally. You've got to be very intentional. It's a choice. That's what he's saying with that language. All of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another. Humility is simply, I'm going to think about you before I think about myself. I'm going to put you before me. I'm not going to take care of me first and then take care of you. I'm going to take care of you first and trust I'm going to get taken care of. That is all humility is. So he says, you better make an intentional choice to do that because it will never happen naturally with any of us. But he says, I want to encourage you to go that route where you let go of control and you put somebody else before you. You become a means to an end and not an end in yourself. Why? Well, because God opposes the proud. Well, the proud are just people, and this is all of us. The proud are just people who put ourselves first. I care about you. I'm going to get to you, but I got to take care of me first. Once my needs are met, once I've taken care of me, once I feel good about where I am, then I'll try to help you. Peter says you need to know God actually opposes you when you put you at the center, when you put you first. But he gives grace to the humble. You know what grace is? Grace is the unearned, undeserved, unexpected, unconditional love of God. Grace is getting something you absolutely don't deserve. It's unearned. You cannot work for it. You can't earn it in any way. There's nothing about you intrinsically that deserves it. And because of that, you would, if you understand who you are and the fact that you don't deserve this, you would never expect it. And it's not conditional. It's not based on you get it as long as you do X, Y, or Z. Peter's going, no. The unearned, undeserved, unexpected, unconditional love of God, you know who gets that? The humble. So why would God be so strong in saying he opposes the proud? Well, because Proud people believe they earn it, they deserve it, and they expect it. And as long as you think you earn, deserve, or expect it, then you can't receive grace, because grace is the very opposite by definition of that. The minute I think I've earned it, then I don't get it anymore. I have to be humble enough to acknowledge I can't earn this and I don't deserve it. And then God says, there you go, that's grace. It's coming your way. So God opposes the proud, not because he's angry with the proud. God opposes the proud because he knows the most important thing, the most valuable thing any of us could experience, the thing that we all need more than anything else, is grace. He's going, your pride is a prison. I oppose pride because your pride is locking you away from grace. It's cutting off your access to grace. Pride's a prison. Humility is the key. The minute I acknowledge I can't earn it and don't deserve it, God says, perfect. Now you can have it. So because of that, Peter gives us some advice. He says, I want you to humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. To lift you up, what he's talking about is, if you'll just put other people first, God says, okay, you put me and others first, and you just be patient, because I'm going to make sure all your desires are taken care of. I put them all in you anyway. I hardwired you to experience this, and I'm going to make sure you get it all. But if you want to be proud and you want to make it expectations, you're on your own to try to get them. You're on your own to try to pull this out of the people in your life. People who can't actually give you the thing that you most want, because they're not built to meet all of these needs. So Peter's point is, let go of this. Humble yourself. Just put other people first and take care of what they need. And trust God to take care of what you need, which creates a lot of anxiety if you actually try to do it, doesn't it? Because again, I'm letting go of control. Peter says, I know this creates fear. I know this creates worry. I know this creates anxiety. I know this creates stress. So he says, here's what I want to invite you to do. And remember, he's lived this. He says, here's what I want to invite you to do. I want you to do the same thing Peter says that I did. I want you to cast all of your anxiety, all your worry, all your fear, all your expectations, all your desires, all that stuff you're carrying and you're trying to make happen and you're trying to get other people to meet. I want you to cast all of it on him. Why, Peter? Because he cares for you. Literally, Peter's saying, would you just walk up and hand it all to Jesus and say, I'm going to quit. I'm going to take my bucket of expectations. I'm going to quit expecting other people to do this here. You just have the bucket. I'm going to trust you to meet my desires and needs when I need it. Now, if you looked at Peter and said, Peter, why do you feel so confident you can trust Jesus enough to give him all that? I think Peter would chuckle. If he was here today, he'd just chuckle and say, well, I spent 3 years with the guy carrying around all kinds of expectations, and he never left me. I was an idiot at times, and he still loved me, and he still maintained a friendship with me, so I knew he cared about me. But then I really knew, because I watched him get arrested, and I watched how he died. And then 3 days later, I'm at a tomb and it's empty, and next thing I know, I'm talking to him. And so at that point, his resurrection confirmed that I could believe everything he had said about this. I don't have to doubt that he loves me. I'm going to give everything to him because I am confident he cares for me. Just think about it this way. Imagine that somebody, and maybe you've had this experience, imagine somebody risked their life to save yours. They ended up not losing their life, but they risked their life to save yours. If you watch somebody physically risk their life to save yours, would you have any doubts the rest of your life that you could trust them? Of course not. You trust them deeply the rest of your life because they had demonstrated the depth of their love and care for you. Well, you know what Jesus did. He didn't just risk his life for you. He gave his life for you. So why wouldn't you trust him with everything? Why would you doubt that he cares for you and wants what's best for you? So, here's what I want to invite you to do. You know what the things are that you're carrying around in your bucket. You know all the things you're trying to control. We Christians, we're pretty ridiculous because we'll trust Jesus with our eternity, You know why? Because we don't feel like we have any control of that. But then the everyday stuff, oh, we don't want to trust him with that stuff because we feel like we can have some control. You know what all that stuff is for you. My question to you today, my invitation for you is Peter's invitation to you. Are you willing, wherever you are in your faith journey, to take whatever the things are in your bucket, your anxieties, your worries, your expectations, your fears, your desires, would you just give it to him? Would you remove yourself as the object of your trust? And would you make him the one you will trust most? Will you humble yourself enough to let go of control and to put him and others before you? And then trust that he will care for you. When you do that, if you'll do that, you will no longer be an end in and of yourself. You will be a means to a greater end, a greater purpose. You'll be a means to God's purpose in your life and in this world. And when you find meaning, guess what you find? When you find meaning, you find happiness that is not contingent on what's happening in your relationships or with your money. When you find meaning, you find a happiness and a joy that is consistent through the good and the bad. So would you cast everything in his hands because he cares for you? Let's pray together. I want to invite you to take this moment and whatever it is you're carrying, whatever it is it's in your bucket, whatever it is you've been expecting, other people to meet these needs. Or maybe you've been expecting yourself, holding yourself to some major requirements to try to meet the needs you think you need. I want to invite you in this moment to say, Jesus, I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to stop trying to do it all myself. I'm going to try to let go of control. I'm going to do what Peter said. I'm going to hand it all to you. I'm putting it all in your hands. And I'm only doing it because I trust you care for me. You want what's best for me. And you'll meet the needs and the desires that you wired into me. Maybe for some of you, this is the first time you've ever done this. Would you be willing to take the step just to say, okay, Jesus, I'm going to go ahead and just, as best I know how, I'm going to give you my whole life because I want you to be my leader. And I want you to be my forgiver. And I want to learn what it is to live life trusting you and your way of life above my own. Jesus, it is not easy for us to do that. It's not easy for us to live it out. But we are so grateful for your grace and forgiveness when we mess it up. And we're so grateful that you love us and care about us enough that you invite us just to give you everything. Not because you're trying to hurt us, because you're trying to help us. So help us to have the courage to hand it over and then to rearrange our lives however we need to, where we trust you and not ourselves. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.